How many of you heard the story before? Good Samaritan, we call it the Good Samaritan. I wonder if we gave it a new title, like what happened on the road to Jericho or something. It would be really spicy. Hands up. How many of you have heard that story before? Yeah, that's good. It's new for some of you. That's excellent. For those of you who heard it a bunch of times, anything new stick out for you? Anything stick out in that story for you today? Well, do I have to get Sharon back up here to read it again? Go and do likewise. There was a phrase, Cornelia, go and do likewise. Right? Anything else? I'll leave it with you. You're like, we don't want to say because you're going to tell us we're wrong and you're going to tell us what's good. No, I'm not going to. I just thought I'd ask while it was being read. That was just, I didn't think of that earlier this week. I just thought, while it was being read, I should ask you, did you pick up on anything in the Good Samaritan story this time around? For some of you, it has to be your 65th time hearing that story. And we used to act it out in the... Did I tell this story in church recently? I told somebody, I got punched in the face. We were acting out in Sunday school in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, in the basement of the White Church. That's the old Methodist church. I was down in the basement, and the guy they picked to be the robber was that kind of kid anyway, right? And I was the guy traveling on the road. Oh, I was set up. We're like 9, 10 years old. And he's like, and robbers attacked him. And this guy just laid one on my chin. I went down like a sack of potatoes. And he's like, what? I'm just acting my part out, right? He's a method actor like Brando. Anyway. Just now that I see it, I kind of still feel that right there. There's lots of sermons. Probably more than any other scripture lesson, this scripture has been taught over and over and over again. And actually, it's one of those stories by Jesus, a parable that you can actually get the meaning of if you read it over a few times. Man on the road. It's a troubling road, gets attacked, laying there in the ditch. Priest goes by. No thanks. Levite goes by. That's the Levites were the helpers in the temple. No thanks. Samaritan comes by. Samaritans were half-breeds. Samaritans were the people of the north of Palestine who had the land had been taken over by the Assyrians, and they were Jews that intermarried with the Assyrians, and from then on were shunned by the Judeans in the south. As dirty. They'd spit, actually. Samaritans walk away, So the Samaritans were not loved people, but they followed the Torah, they followed the laws of God, and they believed that God lived wherever they were in community and lived. There's a conversation with Jesus and the Samaritan woman at the well where they argue about the theology of where God lives, not in Jerusalem, but with us on Mount Sinai. And it's just the Samaritans. They were not the kind of people that the people listening to the story would have thought would help anybody, let alone a Jewish man. And here it is. That's the turn of the story. The wrong kind of person. There is, in their minds, no good Samaritan. That's the little précis of the story right there. I've always found it quite endearing, the putting of the man on the horse, on the donkey, and taking him to the inn and giving money to the innkeeper and saying, I will be back, and if it costs you more, I'll give you that money when I get back. That is just so, there's a passion to that I find stirring. But yesterday morning, when I sat down to really think about the scripture and mull it out, what came to me was to talk to you about the Levite and the priest. That's the classic stopping point for many a sermon, and we just talk about how awful we are and we don't pay attention. But I just want to focus in on something specific about these two men. The priest comes, he sees the man bleeding, no thank you. And there's been arguments over the centuries about, ritual purity, and they couldn't touch a bleeding person and then serve the temple. And there's been lots of excuses for the priests, most of them made up by priests. Just saying. And Levite, same, no, I can't, I'm not going to get mixed up in that kind of action, and maybe there's still robbers around. Who knows? These are the kind of images I grew up with. in our storybooks. This guy, look at him, no thanks. But who were the priest and the Levite? They were men to whom authority had been given, or by whom authority had been taken, depending on how you want to see the systems and the culture of that time. But the fact is, the people of the day respected the priests and the Levites. They were set apart for a certain piece of work, and because of that certain piece of work, given authority. If you want to know what a priest is, anybody says, hey, what's up with priests? The priestly function is to be between the holy and us. In any religion, the priests are what I call the oven mitts. They're the insulated gloves between the electricity of the holy and us, because, for centuries and centuries and centuries, millennia, we thought if humans got too close to God or the holy, so we had to have intermediaries, people to go between. That's what the priesthood is in the world, okay? And so they have this authority and a purpose, and they're set apart to be the go-betweens, the oven mitts, the insulated gloves between us and the holy. The thing about giving these people authority, though, is first, it relieves us of having to act ourselves in certain holy ways. We've often said, well, sure, they can be extra moral and have good ethics. They're priests, or they're Levites, or they're ministers, they're pastors. That's what they've given their life to, right? And so we then go off and live our lives Monday, let's say Sunday at 2 o'clock till Sunday morning. The next time at 10:30, we live our lives, not as good as maybe pastors. Now, you know me, so the jig is up. That's not how it is with me. But that's the traditional thing. That having a priesthood or pastors or ministry, people set aside for religious function, has sometimes relieved us of having to do a bunch of that work ourselves. And second, this authority that's been given to those who are priestly has allowed countless abuses of power to occur. Anytime we give authority to people, there is a chance that the power will be abused. The old phrase is, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I heard that first on Star Trek, just in case you want to know where I got it from. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. I would say, in most senses, almost absolute power can corrupt almost absolutely. It can certainly be used to hurt. And we could list example after example. But I was thinking about it. On Friday morning, I got up for 8 o'clock, quarter to 8. Y'all don't think I'm working that early. I am, once a year. And I went down to the police service and stood in front of the police plaza, or whatever they want the police services headquarters, at the monument for the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And Ashley Moran's family was gathered there with supporters. And Ashley Moran, just fill you in quickly, young woman from North Battleford, a year ago went missing. She was 4 times on the FSIN championship soccer team, an athlete, a model, mentor for young Indigenous children, a great citizen, and she went missing. And this week, the RCMP in Battleford said to the press, we are now treating it as a homicide. We have enough information that we believe that Ashley has been killed. Okay? So the family got together with some other friends, and they put on red shirts, and they got an RV, and they're walking right now from Saskatoon to Battleford in 3 days. Saskatoon to Battleford. Think of this, the first day I think they were going to Borden. That's 43 kilometers in one day. So 11 hours of walking, Google told me. 11 hours of walking. I hope they're okay. So we gathered the police service and had smudging and prayers and good wishes, and sent the walkers on their way with an amazing police presence. They closed the whole lane of Idlewild all the way to the outskirts of town, and there was bicycle cops. I don't think they're called that. cycling officers or something, bike cops, and there was motorcycles, and they closed every intersection as they went through, and they gave them a dedicated lane all the way up one of our busiest streets. Pretty impressive. But I was thinking about absolute authority because I stood right behind a police officer, one step down, and he's there, so I was kind of almost eye level with the belt, and the belt is the authority, right? Like, there's a lot of cool stuff on the belt, including a gun. And it did come to my mind that officer never once thought that I might try and grab that gun. I was just kind of interested. He didn't even give me a look. He didn't eyeball me, check me out, make sure, I was thinking about authority because the officers of law have a ton, almost absolute authority, almost, in our society for what they can do. And in fact, we were gathered there because of that authority being abused. Because the RCMP in North Battleford didn't tell the family that they had shifted the case. This was in the paper. They didn't tell them that they shifted the case from missing to murder. My friends, there is a huge gap between missing and dead. A huge gap. And the family didn't have any warning until it came to them in the press. So here I was on Friday morning with a police service that started to turn the corner in a good way. And a police service in Saskatoon that has had an awful history with Indigenous peoples and has worked hard. The leadership, for sure. They're not all on board yet, but they're working hard. And I'll just tell you one example. There was an officer, the one in charge of moving them up Idlewild, and he was explaining to the family how to be safe in the traffic. And he said this: I'll be behind you in my black truck with my lights on, and the officers will be in front, and I know that your hearts are heavy. So take your time. We are in no hurry, and you are not putting us out at all today. We are here for you. Just that kind of speaking from a police officer to an Indigenous family says we are slowly turning in the police service in Saskatoon. That juxtaposed against the RCMP and what one wise person calls frontier justice in Battleford. The RCMP in North Battleford are not wielding their authority appropriately. I know it can make you uncomfortable when people pick on the police. They got a tough job. Criticizing the police force, there's some people I know just you do not criticize the police, but there's no organization that has power that is beyond critique, including the school system, the medical system, the church. This week I've been very aware of the authority offered to me in one of my priestly roles. I have 4 memorial services. So Thursday, had a service. Saturday, yesterday in the graveside at the cemetery. This afternoon, funeral service. Tuesday, funeral service. So I've been in touch, and my life has been woven intricately with the stories and lives of families this week. And it's one of those places I've been set apart to live out this kind of service to families. There are belief systems, theologies, understandings that I could say to those family members in their time of ability that could do a lot of damage. And in fact, I heard some of those beliefs echoed back to me by some family members who were suffering theologies, and we've talked about them here, like, God took this person from me, which you will never hear me say. I was very aware of my own authority this week in pastoring to families, that it's so easily I could say something that was self-serving or that encouraged the authority of the church in the wrong way, or the power of the Bible in the wrong way, to use Scripture as a weapon instead of a tool. And we all know the clergy, have done a lot of damage in the past. I'm very aware of that whenever I put my collar on. It doesn't happen often. But I wore my collar in the Pride Parade this year and walked with the churches United Churches, and was very aware of the eyes that were on me in my collar, and Reverend Deb's lovely rainbow stole that I borrowed, that there were many people on the sides of the streets that had been hurt by clergy in the past. I have to talk about it. So the Samaritan story asks us to look at our own power and privilege. You know, there was a sign that was up last year, I think it was, encouraging reconciliation. A city of Saskatoon sign here in Idlewild, and the man's face, and he was claiming his own white privilege. Right? Oh, that just made people so angry. And the mayor and the city office got so many awful, awful, awful emails. How dare they have a poster where there's a man who's Caucasian and he's saying white, he lives out white privilege. We don't like to talk about it. But this gospel lesson requires us to think about our own power and places of privilege. Why do we have, some of us, why do we have power? And others not? And who gave us that power, or have we taken? And an even more important question. We do have power. I got tons of power in this world. Do we think we deserve it? That's a really good one on the prairies, where we come from, pioneer people, and tilled the land ourselves, and we worked hard with the sweat of our brows. Do we think we deserve the privilege, the power, and the authority that we have? Even if we worked hard for it, do we think that makes us more privileged, like we deserve to be more privileged than others? And what circumstances, what social context allowed our hard work to pay off compared to hard work of others? You know, I got a graduate degree. I'm not a great reader. I got a wonky eye just a few years ago. My eye goes. No wonder reading's been tough. It makes me very sleepy. And I'm an extrovert. Reading books, I just want to know what's going on outside of the book. Hey, did somebody walk past my door? Right? Here's the thing in grad school. Keep your door closed if you're an extrovert. I got through grad school. I could say, gee, I worked hard for that. I worked hard, 3 years. Right? Read a lot of history I did not want to read. Read a lot of theology I wish I hadn't read. But it was tough. It was tough, I could say. Tough. I worked hard. I deserve to be where I am up here on my high stool with privilege. You ever think like that? You ever think, I worked hard? There are so many in our world who work hard, and it doesn't get them a graduate degree or even living wage. They're working hard. They are really working hard, sometimes 3 jobs. So do we think we deserve what we have? And so importantly, we need to ask ourselves, how is it our power, our privilege, our authority is keeping us from loving as Jesus has called us to love? Interesting thing in a city is all of us pass by people who need love every day. Bus stops, in the mall. But one of our best examples, one of our Good Samaritan stories come alive, is when we walk past panhandlers. Panhandlers, some could say, are sent by the Spirit of God to shake the rest of us loose. There you go, you heard it from me first. Panhandlers sent by the Spirit of God like street-sitting prophets to make us question so many important things. If you want to dig into the story of the priest and the Levite, think about what happens to you when you pass a panhandler. Think about how it is you just either keep on moving by or give a little bit of change, or however it is you interact with panhandlers. What is it that comes up in your heart or your mind at that time? And this is right where I'm with you, folks, because it is not easy, and I have not found a way that yet feels comfortable to me. But Bishop Don Boland, who's now Archbishop of Saskatchewan, Catholic bishop, he was out, lived on the street for 36 hours for Sanctum AIDS Hospice. Forget what they call that event, but every year a group of leaders go out and live on the street for 36 hours. And they have to go get clothes. The first thing they do is they meet at this place and take clothes that aren't theirs from clothes that have been donated. So there's Don Boland, who's a pretty sharp dresser, and he's got a ball cap and beat up clothes and, and shoes that don't fit him. And he said, I couldn't believe the lack of eye contact. I couldn't believe the people, he said, his own parishioners, people from his own diocese who walked right on by him because he was seated on the sidewalk or on a bench with his hat in his hand. So he encouraged us, simply say hello or good morning or how you doing. Is that the beginning? I'm not sure. No answers today, my friends, because it's just too big, this story. It is too tough. The questions, not too tough, very tough, the questions that come from this story around who we are in the world and how we navigate the world with the immense authority that we have. With panhandlers or people who are asking for help, there's often that paternal instinct, Well, if I give them this, it's going to go drink it. This is going to go buy smokes, right? I wrestle with that when we help families here. On your behalf, I have to weigh out those issues. Every time we have that thought, this is what they're going to do with it. That's what we call paternalism, right? That's us immediately treating that person with less power, with less brains, like they're not smart, and like they're children. And we get to say, we know what's best for them. Right? That's what's happening right there. It's our power and authority in full force. Our privilege allows us, we think, to think of others like they are our children. And like, if we give them a gift, we get to tell them how to use that gift. Or better yet, we don't give them a gift because we've assumed already we know how they're going to use it. Summertime is a great time for this kind of stuff. It's a good time for wrestling. Remember a couple years ago I preached through Job all summer long? My mother said, why would you ever preach about Job in the summertime? It's better the summertime than the darkness of winter. I think summertime, when we're recreating and we're out in the garden and we get our hands in the soil and we're smelling flowers, or we're at the lake, or we're traveling with our family or our grandchildren, kids, it's a great time when we're having coffee, we're sitting up on a deck at the Yard and Flanagan or somewhere, having a pop or something else that isn't in the Bible, and we're talking with our friends. It's a great time to wrestle with these key questions. Who are we? How have we been the priest or the Levite this week? And how can we move just a little bit more into being like the Samaritan? How can we just crack our hearts just a little bit through the questions I've offered this morning? Crack open our hearts by questioning our place in this world and who it is we're actually called to be. Amen.